I'm Rob Followell, the CEO of the Followell Company. I'd like to welcome you to our Ignite Leadership podcast. Our special guest today is Angela Ammons. Angela is the Chief Executive Officer at Clinch Memorial Hospital and has been since 2017. Prior to becoming the CEO at Clinch Memorial, she was the nurse manager for a behavioral health unit at a nearby hospital. Angela's nursing career did not end there, as she has been known to fill in on the floor when the hospital faces staffing issues. Angela is the daughter of a Korean immigrant and a Vietnam War veteran and was raised by her grandparents in Macon, Georgia. However, because of this tumultuous relationship, she left home at the age of 15. She was nearly homeless at this young age, but overcame the challenge by waitressing at a local Shoney's restaurant. She eventually became the first college graduate on her mother's side of the family. And since then, she has climbed the ranks from receptionist at a local doctor's office to a registered nurse supervising a unit to now CEO. When Angela was hired as CEO, she was not actively looking for an administrative position. A member of the Clinch County Hospital Board approached her after hearing about her leadership skills on the behavioral health unit. At that time, Clinch Memorial was suffering. On her first day at the hospital, she was told that the hospital had just 3 days cash on hand, and if things didn't change quickly, the hospital would have to close its doors. Immediately, Angela began making the necessary changes to put the stability back at the hospital. And that was not an easy task, as she had to completely change the culture of the hospital. And this meant disrupting an environment that people had accepted for many years. However, now, after 3 years, Angela has significantly improved the financial stability at Clinch Memorial by adding new service lines, one of those service lines being a lucrative swing bed program that treats intubated patients. In 2018, Angela was recognized as the Hospital Leader of the Year by Hometown Health. And a year later, Clinch Memorial was recognized as the Hospital of the Year. Recently, she was featured in Time magazine for her work that had saved Clinch Memorial Hospital from closure. Let's welcome to the podcast, Angela Ammons. Well, Angela, I shared a little bit of your background in the introduction. Why don't you share a little bit about who Angela Ammons really is?
Oh, Rob, that is a loaded question. I sometimes every day I have that conversation with myself throughout as the day progresses. But I am a registered nurse. I have a varied background in nursing, from starting out in critical care nursing, psych, special projects management as a med-surg manager, and so forth. I am the mother of 5 children, and I feel very blessed to have all of them in my life. And at times that has been very, very chaotic for me. But I am a huge proponent of mission work, volunteering, community work, as much as you can get involved in doing that. I feel very fortunate to have been given this opportunity to be CEO of Clinch Memorial Hospital. And it really has been what has defined me in almost the last 4 years of just working, getting to know the team, doing a culture change. And I can't understate that this has been my life for the last 4 years. So that's pretty much who I am today.
I understand. You have made a tremendous impact at Clinch Memorial. Tell us a little bit about that journey and what was the driving force behind that, and what are you seeing these days taking place?
Gosh, I am very uncomfortable with taking credit about doing anything at Clinch Memorial Hospital, because I do believe it was a collaborative effort from people who are working here, and my mentor, and just the resources that were made available to me as a new CEO. One of my favorite quotes is, your life story is your leadership story. And so when I was propositioned about this position, at first, immediately was like, oh no, I've never been a CEO. I can't do this job. There must be some huge mistake, or these people can't get anyone else to come to this hospital. But then also the survivor and I have to win and overcoming an imposter syndrome mentality jumped in and said, well, I would love the opportunity to see what I can do. Who gets an opportunity to become CEO of a hospital at this stage in their life? So I was invited by the board to come and interview. And I just said, you know what, if that happens, if it's meant to be, it'll happen. And then I waited and just went on about my life. And a few weeks later, they reached out to me and said, we want to offer you the position. And here we are. So I was not fully prepared with what I was walking into as the CEO of this hospital. I had worked for PPS hospitals before I passed Mayo Clinic, worked HCA, Brunswick Hospital, and so forth. So stepping into rural hospital world is completely different unless you've been there all of your life. And then also being an outsider coming into a small rural town was also a huge challenge for me, and not really knowing what foundation was there. And Rob, literally, I walked in the first day and I was just so excited. I think I was 30 minutes early to work. So I drove around in my new dress, my new briefcase, and I was just so excited because, you know, I was going to save the world. And I walk in, and within 2 hours, pounding headache, me doubting what in the world have I done? And I had just been inundated with so many different dynamic personalities and issues that I seriously thought I was on an episode of Punk'd. I was like, this cannot be happening. And what did I do? And there are some people who counseled me before taking the job, and they said they had heard that Clinch Memorial Hospital was on the way down the drain, that they were going to close. You're just going to be the scapegoat. This is going to be the end of your career because you will be synonymous with its closing. And I started to have those thoughts that maybe they were right. Like, I was like, I have really stepped into the end of my career here. And then my second board meeting ever at this hospital was our auditors coming in and tell us that due to multi-million-dollar losses, we were going to close if we didn't do something differently. And so I really went home that night in just a panic and anxiety-driven drive back home, a 40-minute drive home, that, oh my God, I was hired to be a scapegoat for this hospital. But then the survivor part of me clicked in and said, you're not going to let this happen. You're going to do whatever it takes to not allow this hospital close. You cannot have this ruin your reputation. And all the employees that you've met in this town, whether they realize it or not, needs this hospital to succeed. And you just got to do what it takes. And so it's been hard, Rob, and you're a former CEO of hospital. You know the challenges that come with that. We really had to shake up the dynamics and the culture that was present because it was not conducive to a successful hospital. What it really was I think some very good people, good-hearted people. I don't think there is one bad person that's ever worked here. But they really felt that the hospital was created to be an employer of Clinch County. And what the hospital was created for was to make sure that we provide excellent patient care to the community, that we stay open, that we adhere to the expectations of CMS, state boards, and so forth. And we were really quite removed from that. And it was just like chipping away at this huge problem. And a friend of mine who came to work for me, and we had worked together for years, who's now my compliance officer, he said, what we're doing is clearing the wreckage from the past so we can build a brand new foundation. And he said, every day we're just going to clear that wreckage. And it really is. And even today, there are things that we are trying to overcome that was created. And I don't think it was created with any ill intent. It was just a lack of knowledge, a lack of forethought, a lack of dreaming and planning for the future, and just immediate responses that you didn't evaluate the outcomes for, and we're paying for that now. So that's what we're doing. You know, with the pandemic, it has been thrown us into another challenging aspect of this job, but I have created, and I'm just so thankful for them, this core group of managers that I have who have just stepped up to the plate and have exceeded my expectations, and who have been willing to follow whatever dream or goal that I've had and just to work hard to make it happen. And we would not have received any awards and the accolades and the grants that we have received if it were not for them. And for my mentor, Robin Rao, she is a very successful CEO over at Miller County Hospital. And Rob, I don't know if I told you this before, but I started researching rural hospital CEOs before I took my job. And her name kept popping up in news articles and magazine articles and so forth. And I called her on my first day on the job, not even knowing if we were accredited, if we had a rural health center or whatever, because she was just throwing these questions at me. And I felt like such a complete idiot by calling her, but she's so funny. And I've told the story multiple times. It was just an act of grace and divine intervention that the call went directly to her when I asked for it, because she's a very busy person. And I said, Robin Rao, you don't know who I am. My name is Angela Ammons. I'm an RN. Today is my first day on the job as a CEO of a rural hospital. And I know the things I don't know. And I know I need a mentor, and I want to know if you'll help me and be my mentor. And Robin, in perfect Robin fashion, if anybody knows her, give me a second, put down the phone. I heard her cuss like in the background. And then she picked up the phone and said, I can call back. This is a bad time. And she said, no, what the H do you want? Let's talk about this. And so after sharing a little bit of my story, and she visited with me and I visited with her, she said, I see myself 10, 11 years ago, exactly where you are, the same issues that you're discussing, the board issues, the finances. And she said, I just feel like I need to help you. And I don't know why, because so many people call me and ask for help all the time. So I don't know why I'm helping you. And I said, call it divine intervention. She says, call it what you want. But that's Robin. So, and then from there, we built this relationship, and we've had to have some very hard conversations because she's had to be hard and very upfront with me. And I love that. I'm a very direct person. I rather let's just be direct. I don't like dancing around issues. I want to be direct. Let's discuss it. Let's get it over with. And, I've had a really hard week or last couple of weeks because we've had some turnover and some news that's been delivered to me. And it was kind of crushing to my ego and to, I guess, deflated me with all the work that's been done. And I called her and said, Robin, I just don't know if I'm the right person here. I don't know if the turnover is because of me. I don't know if I'm in the right place. And she says, oh my God, this is a very loaded question. Usually, sometimes I ask questions because I want validation. And then sometimes when someone doesn't give me that validation, it kind of just sticks really hard in you. But I appreciate her doing that. She said, Angela, you've got so many things that come up against you. She said, you're a new CEO, so that can be a challenge. She said, you're not in an urban area where you can pull from to get the people that you need all the time. And she says, you've got to find out what the core issue is. And she's going to talk you off of this ledge. Don't do anything rash. But she says, we've got to find out what the problem is. And there have been times that I've left a heated board meeting in tears, and I've called her, and she's been there for me. And times that she's driven down just to assess situations. But I cannot stress enough how fortunate I am to have a mentor who would be willing to be vulnerable, to take up the time for a competitor. And, in this world of healthcare, everybody loves to silo and hold on to information because they think that they can't share anything with anybody. And I think that's why so many hospitals are closing, because they're not trying to find a way to work together. And I hate to say it too, in a world of a professional world where male dominates CEO positions, whenever there is another female CEO, sometimes I feel like there is a reluctance to befriend or share information because, you have to fight so hard to find a seat, and you think that that's the only seat and you're not willing to give that up. So if you can't be vulnerable and you can't share because you might lose yours. And I remember listening to this podcast for Lady Bosses. And I remember the CEO saying, instead of worrying about you having the only seat at the table, how about building another table? and
I
opening up a
love it.
lot more seats. And that's what Robin did for me. And I promised to myself and to her that I would pay it forward as much as I could with every opportunity that I could, and to be vulnerable and to share and to mentor as much as possible. Because to tell you the truth, Robin, I don't know where we would be if I had not taken that step and she had not agreed. So overcoming those challenges was a lot easier because of the network. And I am a huge introvert. I know it's hard for you to believe, but I am a huge introvert. The last thing I want to do is go to a conference and then go to the cocktail hour, pass out my business cards and make connections. And I was very shy my first year as CEO. So I went to a couple of conferences, did a couple of brief hellos, and ran back to my room. I'm like, I'm here, that's it. But then when I became more comfortable with who I was and what we were doing, there is a huge amount of value that can be added just getting out and meeting people. I met you at a conference and hearing you speak at Becker's, I think, one time on a panel, and then meeting other people. But it's not just meeting other people that can help you, but it has the same challenges as you. And you can see that you're not in it alone, and that you're doing the best you can and everybody else is doing the best you can. So I've had to grow both professionally and personally over the last 4 years, and I'm very grateful for that. If I was standing here before you, the same person that I was September 25th, 2017, this hospital would not be open. So we have overcome a lot of challenges. There are days that I feel like we've taken 3 steps back whenever we take 2 steps forward. But I've had to just give myself an allotted amount of pity party time. And I do that. Okay, Angela, you're going to get one evening. And then you're just going to have to dust yourself off, pick yourself up, put your big girl panties on, and get back at it. It's not going to always be success after success after success. And if you truly believe that you're trying to build the right team, when people leave, they were just not the right person anymore. So, I had to do that last night. Like, you get in a lot of 2 hours, and you need to get over it and just move on. So, still trying to build successes. I've done several things wrong, but that's okay. At least we tried something. And we're trying to survive in this crazy world of rural healthcare.
I talk in leadership training all the time. One of my favorite people, and I love to compare sports to business. And I talk about Michael Jordan. I think he's the greatest basketball player of all times. And oftentimes he says, and I share that on 26 different occasions, he was entrusted with that game-winning shot and he missed, but he was still the greatest of all time. So even the greatest of the greats miss, but that doesn't stop you. That you just have to keep pushing and
love
trying.
that. I'll have to remember that.
And I know that you are a tremendous mentor to everyone around you, and you truly believe it is the team, and that you're there to support the team. And it comes through loud and clear when I've been around your team. Anything that you want to share about mentorship that you've done for your team? I know Robin has been a huge mentor, and I've referred young, especially female CEOs, because you are such a mentor for others. But the people that report to you, what are some of those things that you do to really help them to grow and be the best that they can be?
Well, I've learned that people in this world do not have enough hard conversations. And I think it's seen in a lot of parenting issues, things at school, in the workplace is the worst because, and I understand where everybody's coming from. You graduated college, you're a respiratory therapist, you're a nurse, you should know better. I think that's the mentality of everyone. You should know better. You're a mother, you have 3 children, you've been married, you're a grandmother. At what point is it my responsibility to tell you how to act when you come to work or to accomplish your goals? But it's everyone's moral responsibility. I've learned when you see someone that is just not doing the right thing, instead of turning that blind eye or thinking that somebody else is going to handle it, I believe that being a good mentor is being able to tell the truth in a manner that is delivered in a loving, kind way. But sometimes truth, Rob, it doesn't matter how you deliver it, it's still perceived as very ugly and hateful. So when I started here, I didn't want to rock the boat too much. And I was still trying to find my footing and really what I was supposed to do here and how I was supposed to handle it. And I was really just putting out what felt like 1,000 fires every day. But I realized too that my managers were getting managerial salaries. They were managing several other people. And that if I wanted them to be effective, we had to have some very pointed conversations. And we had to do some performance improvement plans, which a lot of people took offense to. And so, listen, this is just clear-cut goals. This is what's going on now, what has to happen, and I'm giving you a timeline to get it done. So you can validate and prove that you can get it done and that we are on the same page. And they're like, this has never happened before. I don't even know how to act about this. I'm just very offended. And so don't be offended. First of all, don't be offended, because the last thing I want to do is fire you. I'm trying to give you the tools for you to be successful. Mentoring means taking the time when you really don't have the time. And I've finally had to put a little gatekeeper, because I did have an open door policy, and people received that anytime they wanted, they can just pop in. Or having some very private conversations, or I'm in the middle of a meeting. And also, Rob, if you want to come see me and you need 30 minutes, I want to give you 30 minutes. I don't want to give you 2 minutes. And then you feel deflated because you felt like I brushed you aside. So I had to make sure that I did make time for them. And I had to come to the realization you can be at the top and make friends with people that you manage or work with, because there's no way that you're going to learn who they are at home, maybe some of the issues they're having, and you can help them. Because sometimes people start performing badly at work because they're going through issues at home, and you never know that. They don't ever feel vulnerable enough to tell that to you unless you've kind of broken or taken down some barriers. So sharing information with them, if I found a good article and say, I really want you to read this. And then having a meeting once a month with my managers is something we started doing. And it's called the Nurse Leadership Conference. And I took that from Clinch Memorial, where I used to work, where all the heads of the different departments came together. And we talked about the issues that we're having, staffing issues, what projects we were working on, because I think people are just very narrow-sighted. Like, I'm the only one who's going through anything. I'm the only one who's facing any pressures. And once we started meeting together, I call it the Knights of the Round Table, there was a lot of sharing. Well, I can help you with that. I did a project. Let me help you. And I think there's a lot more understanding. And I have had to come to the realization, even this last month, that I expect people to react to things and handle things like I do. And I get so disappointed when they don't. And I have to realize that they have not walked in the same shoes that I have, that their life experiences have not been the same, and that they're not made up with the same genetic code as you. So you can't be disappointed because they don't react to that. But the thing that you can be responsible for is to at least give clear expectations. This is what I've done to help me. Whatever you do now is in your court. And just leave it at that. That I'm no longer responsible for actions. Because you've had to fire people. It's the last thing I want to do. And I probably fire too slow, because I try to give people chance after chance after chance. And well, they're going through a divorce, or going through this, or they're going through that. But still, we have a responsibility to come and bring 100% every day. And if I keep allowing you not to do that, and my people who are bringing 110% a day are going to see that, and it's not going to be good. So I've learned to address things much quicker and fire quickly if I have to. And that's hard. That's hard for people to understand, especially when I had employees that had been here 30 years and we had to fire them. 15 years, 20 years, or gosh, Rob, I don't know if you have this experience, but people right out of school and they are just so, I don't know what, they are so arrogant. They think a degree has prepared them for their 21-year-old self to come in and take over a hospital, because they now rule the world, and they come in with these master's degrees and they have no real world experience. They are what their mothers and dads have told them they are. They've got a trophy for every single thing in their life. And the minute you have to sit down with them and say, your schedule is 8 o'clock, you have been late every day for the last 3 weeks, you need to be here at 8 o'clock. And they take such offense to it. And you just can't believe that people would be offended at being spoken to about coming to work on time. Or I noticed you left work very early for the last several days. Well, I have a new gym schedule and I need to get my workout in. And I'm just like stunned in silence sometimes. And so, no, I have to have a conversation with you. You were hired to do a job. Your schedule is this. You're so new in your position that it is not wise for you to leave work early. You should be working a little bit harder than everybody else to prove yourself, and you're still in your 90-day probationary period. Or people that come in and say, I'm here to take over the world. I'm here to take over. Great. Can you just come to work on time? You haven't worked 40 hours a week since you've been here, but can you do that? But realizing too that we're hiring a culture that is a trophy kid culture, and the millennials who believe that there should be immediate gratification. I need a high salary. I need to leave at 3 o'clock every day because I've got to pick up a basketball game or something, and just being real with them. And I don't think there's enough mentors that are being real with them. And I wish there was some kind of class in college when they're going for their master's degree and so forth. It says, listen, this is your expectation. They only owe you minimum wage, and anything above that's a bonus or it's a benefit. It really is. So mentoring can be hard, but can also be gratifying. And I think if anybody is questioning whether or not they can be a mentor or should be a mentor, I would just say, be honest. Start out like you can hold out. Have those real conversations right up front. Let them know exactly who you are so there are no surprises. And then don't forget, even when you're busy with your life, that to put that on your schedule as a priority, to send a thank you card. Look, I know it's been hard. Here's a free meal. Let's go and get coffee. Can you join me for sushi? Taking 2 or 3 people out to dinner randomly, I think, is something that you can't put value on or a price, because them walking away from dinner. I remember I took 3 people to dinner one night, 4 of my managers, after we looked at a project. And I got a note or an email or a text message from each one of them saying, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me. I enjoyed myself. I'm grateful that you took an interest in me. And I believe that made a huge difference in the way they worked and performed. So, and to forgive. I'm a person of grace and forgiveness because I have been given so much grace and forgiveness in my life that I believe that you can't forgive too much for shortcomings, but you do have to be realistic at a point to decide they're trying hard and they failed, or they're just not meeting the expectation. Those are 2 different things.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's a great segue. I always ask this question of my guest. All of us, some of us way more than others, have those times in our life, in our careers, that we either don't live up to our own expectations or those of other people. And those are some of the greatest opportunities for us to learn and to grow. Can you share with us a situation that you had like that, where you didn't either live up to your own expectations or to someone else's, and how you handled that, how you grew from that?
Gosh, I am my worst critic. So I do not live up to my own personal expectations on a daily basis. I hired a coach to help me out with certain things. And I had a list of what had to be accomplished for the day, how to start out, and where I felt on certain topics for that day. And then I'm to close it up at the end of the day on if I view myself as better. And most of the time I don't, because I'm just so hard on myself. But I remember disappointing someone in my life to the point to where I thought I would never get over that. I never thought I would be able to look them in the face again or come past that. And I realized much later that they had already forgiven me. And so sometimes we avoid situations and we avoid people and we avoid going back to our hometowns because we think that we are so much more important to everybody than we actually are, and that we just ruin and waste so much good time that could have been spent in a positive manner. So just constantly beating ourselves up with that. So I've told myself on multiple occasions, it's just be the first to ask for forgiveness. Be very clear and communicate instead of assuming anything. But I remember starting here And I started out one way, and I wanted something to happen so badly. And it had to happen on a certain date and a certain timeline. If it didn't happen that way, Rob, I considered it a huge failure. And it did not happen in the time frame I wanted. And I went home, and it really just threw this cloud over me for several days. Like, what are you doing here? You're such a huge disappointment. Everyone's going to find out you're a fraud. These conversations, which most people who suffer from imposter syndrome do. You said that this was going to happen. It didn't happen. You didn't get this doctor to come here. And you already told the board it's going to happen, and it didn't happen. 6 months later, we got a different physician, and it happened at the right time. And looking back now, if that physician had come at the time I wanted, it would have been complete and absolute failure. It would not have panned out, and I think the failure would have been even worse. So sometimes when something doesn't happen in our own time frame or our plan, or it's a failure, you think it didn't happen the way I wanted, sometimes it absolutely is for the best. And one of the best books I've read recently, and reading this book, I think I've cried 4 times. And the first time I was sitting in the Atlanta airport reading this book, but the creator and founder of IT Cosmetics, I don't know if you read her book. It's called Believe It. And it's Jamie Kern Lima. And she created this company, and no one believed in her. And she was turned down multiple times by QVC, L'Oreal, Revlon, and everyone. And she just kept at it. And with all of the disappointments and the no's, she was thrown all this other personal life stuff. But then several years later, all the people who told her no were coming back and offering her billion-dollar deals. She was the biggest seller on QVC. She said, looking back, if I had gotten the yes when I wanted it, it would have been an absolute complete fail because I really was not ready. So failing and disappointing people or disappointing yourself, if you really believe that everything happens at the right time, you just have got to stop beating yourself up and saying, okay, what do I need to learn? Where do I need to grow? What did I do wrong? What was right about the situation? And just sit back and just give yourself a little bit of grace and more forgiveness. But I do disappoint. I'm sorry, I disappoint people all the time, whether I realize it or not. And I have to come back and ask for forgiveness and try to make it up to them. But I try hard not to disappoint people, but I feel like I do at times.
I know we all do. We all do. One of the things that I share with people that I coach and mentor often, and I always tell them, like Jim Rohn said, watch or listen to me very carefully, but don't watch me too close, because yes, I struggle with it. I
love it. That's me. That's me. Yes.
I struggle with it all the time, but it is the use of a debrief at the end of every single day, and then follow that up the next day with a brief to prepare yourself. But if we can all take the time at the end of the day, at the end of the month, at the end of the year, to really reflect on the day and what did we get from it? Where did we fall short? What did we learn? And my last podcast was with a mentor of mine, Kyle Defer. And Kyle said on his desk, he said he had a notepad that said, what did I learn today? And if we can all take that and really look at life, look at our careers as just part of life's journey, and we're all meant to be a little bit better the next day. And so what can we take away? Because every single person that we meet, whether we felt like it was a good or a bad interaction, we can learn something from that. So kudos to you for having that approach. Let me ask you the next question.
Mm-hmm.
If you had the opportunity to give advice to a younger Angela, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh my God, that is such a fun and dangerous question, Ron. I would, oh my gosh, I would tell the younger self that pleated jeans is not a good idea. That doesn't matter if everybody else is wearing them, you probably shouldn't wear them. No, I would tell them that everything that you're going through, you're going to survive. Okay. And that the pain or the disappointment is only temporary, and that not everyone that comes into your life is going to stay, and you have to learn to let them go. But I would also tell them or her that there's going to be a lot of disappointments, and you're just going to have to learn to get over them, and you're going to disappoint a lot of people. then there can never be enough grace and forgiveness in your life to overcome the things you do wrong or what other people do. But the biggest thing I think I would tell her is that you are enough, and whatever you are doing, whether it's personal or professional, not only are you enough, but you're probably more or better than enough. And just to remember that.
Awesome. What are some books and quotes that have meant a lot to you or meaning a lot to you? You already mentioned one, but what are some of those that really drive you and you'd say everybody needs to read this?
Gosh, there have been so many. One of the great things about living about 40 minutes away from where you work is that you have the opportunity to listen to a lot of audibles and a lot of podcasts. So Brene Brown, Daring to Lead, she is phenomenal. And a lot of the books and presentations that she's read, I eat up anything that she puts out, because she talks about vulnerability and the power of that. And so a lot of things that she has done is just really hit home. And a lot of the CEOs that she's interviewing most recently are successful people. It is empowering and satisfying in a sense to hear all of them who are very successful. I was listening to one this morning, Doug Conant. He's, I think, a Fortune 500 CEO who is also one of the few that's also a best-selling author. And he was talking about, he's the one who gave me the quote that your life story is your leadership story. And that made me think on the way into work this morning, I'm like, he's absolutely right. My leadership skill is survival, overcoming, flexing, bending to whatever wind comes our way. But that is what I've had to do all of my life, is just overcome obstacles and survive and beat the next thing that's been thrown at me. And I really think it's prepared me for this job. I don't know how a person who really did not have any adverse life issues could handle what's been thrown at us here. But I love her stuff, and I love the 5-second rule by Mel Robbins. Have you heard about her? She blew my mind. I remember listening to her book, and she says, do not hit the snooze button. It's going to set you up for failure the rest of the day. And so I remember that every time I'm tempted to hit the snooze button, I just need to get up, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and go, and just make those changes. But I am a voracious reader, Rob. I remember as a child escaping to a library and just sitting there for hours and reading book after book after book. And when children would check out their books and they have a couple, I remember going up to the librarian and saying, how many can I take home? And I would go home with 10 or 12 books. And sometimes I think because I was in there so much, she would let me check out a couple more than what I was supposed to. But coming back in a week and returning them all and have read them within the 1 to 2 week times, there have been so many books that have fashioned, or I should say, build a foundation for me that I can still remember, and that have helped me dream or realize there was a world outside of my little home and the life that I was living at that time as a child, and inspired me, or made me aspire to be better than what I was. So there are so many books, and if you come into my home, you'll see stacks of books sitting everywhere. Simon Sinek is a author that I love, and I read a lot of his stuff. But poets, some of these up and coming poets, some of the words that I read in their books, it just like hits me straight to the core, strikes me to the core, because I'm like, oh my God, you've lived where I've lived and you're speaking my language. And so I can't say that there has been specifically one book, but it's just been a world of authors and storytellers that have just shaped my life and shaped who I am. So if anyone doesn't read, what I suggest for you is to look up Audible, because you're reading in a sense when you're driving, and it's a great way to listen to a book or read something that you otherwise wouldn't normally have time to do. But really, it's so beneficial. And I love words, love them. They have either been a shield or a dagger my entire life. So, and I've said this before, both printed and spoken have either hurt or healed. So I love books.
I had a podcast that was actually published earlier this week with Tashar Vakil. And I always ask, and I haven't asked you because I think you already answered it, about mentors. And when I asked Tashar that, he said mentors for him have been books. He, like you, he has gained so much from reading books. Not that he doesn't have mentors, but his greatest mentors have been people through books and other forms. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with him wholeheartedly.
all
And
right,
I've
so
also had people in my life, Rob, who treated me in such a negative fashion, even as a child, or in different aspects of work, who have definitely shown me what not to do as a mentor, has shown me
sure.
definitely a side of a person that I never want to be. So instead of being hurt by the things that have happened in the past, it has shaped me in a different direction, to where I'm very careful not to redo the things that were done. I just remember, because I was on my own at 15. And from then before then, I lived with a family who really was not accepting of my mother's Korean heritage. And so I did feel a lot of discrimination, I think, and just uneducated hate about who she was, and that we didn't look the same. And then it just kind of crossed over to being 15 and going through lots of things, being on your own, and then starting jobs without true mentorship or parenting. So I made a lot of mistakes during that time. And instead of someone taking me under their wing and saying, you really should do this, Angela, that dress is not appropriate, or this, it was just condescending and just hurtful things. So I've learned from all of that, I guess, how to be better than what was shown to me at different times. So
Awesome. Okay, here's another good question for you.
okay.
If you were to describe yourself with just one single word, what would that word be?
Survivor.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
You may ask other people and they may give you another word.
We've all got our word. We've got
That's
our
right.
word.
Yes.
And the word could be different tomorrow or next week, but generally we have one or two, or a phrase that we would say, this is me. For years in the hospital realm, if you were to go back probably 20 years and ask people, what's Rob's motto? They would tell you fair, firm, and consistent, because that was my motto. And it really, I began to mold that and shape that. And towards the end of my career, I had my 6 values on a piece of paper typed out, and I'd actually put my definition of those words, and I'd be able to pull that out and say to people, listen, here's my values. If I don't do one of these, if you see me and what you see doesn't match this, then one of 3 things has happened. I didn't have all the information that you have. You didn't have all the information that I had when I made my decision, or I just made a boneheaded decision, which I am certainly capable of. But if I don't match these, I want you to call me out on it. And I think that word, being able to, again, to reflect on things and think through and say, okay, what is it? What are my values? What's really driving me? Those are the guardrails that we have in life. So being a survivor is one of those things that when you're having that tough time, you're going to hear that word over and over and over. Whatever's going on, I can get through this. I've been down this road before. So I think that's awesome. If people want to learn more about you, and your story is fantastic, and you've been written up in Time Magazine and other things, we talked about those in your introduction. If people want to learn more about you or about Clinch Memorial, how can they do that? And talk to us a little bit about the Georgia Heart, the tax that they can pay to, or they can donate to.
Well, sure. Well, now that the pandemic is hopefully dwindling down and we're getting more people vaccinated, we have opened up very limited visiting hours. But I invite anyone who wants to come down or travel over to Clinch Memorial Hospital and see our hospital and see what we're doing. It's just a call and make an appointment. I'd love to take you to lunch, show you the facility, and show off my employees and coworkers, and let you know what a phenomenal team of people they are, and how they always make me look good every time I turn around. So I would love to do that, but visit our website. And I am hiring, or have hired, a phenomenal girl right out of a UGA. She was born and raised in Homerville, Georgia. She's coming back to be our new PR person, and also head our foundation. So if anyone is interested in contributing to what we do through our foundation, she would be your point of contact. And her name is Lily James. Or you can just reach out to me, and my email and contact information is on our website at clinchmh.org. But I'm so glad you brought up the Georgia tax credit, because it is a phenomenal program. So the state of Georgia legislation realized that rural hospitals were struggling, and we had to give, or they had to do something to create some form of stability. And there was a tax credit where people could give money to schools and receive a dollar for dollar tax credit, I think, for private schools. So they set aside $60 million every year in the state of Georgia for whomever wanted to give or donate money to a rural hospital of their choice on their approved list, that the state of Georgia would see it as a dollar for dollar tax credit. So it's not a charitable donation, not on the state side. So Rob, if you and your family lived in Georgia and you wanted to give us $500, you would submit that. You would choose Clinch Memorial Hospital through the Georgia Heart Program, and the state of Georgia would review it and say, okay, Rob, we consider you've paid $500 of your state taxes. So you can ask yourself, if I pay Georgia taxes, what happens to it? How is it spent? Who really benefits from that? But if you want to do something good for rural America or rural Georgia, and say, choose a hospital, choose Clinch Memorial Hospital, because we're working so hard, we're independent, we're trying to survive. And instead of you paying taxes to where you don't know where it goes, you can give it to the Georgia Heart Tax Credit to Clinch Memorial Hospital, and you know that you are helping to employ 150 plus people, save lives, help battle a pandemic, and keep us thriving in rural America, in rural Georgia. And I have gone to conferences that for the Texas Rural Hospital Association and the Rural Hospital Association of the United States, and they are blown away that the state of Georgia has done this for rural hospitals, because I hear the same stories. I see the closings happening all over our nation, and Georgia is such a great state to allow Georgians to help rural hospitals stay open. And a lot of people get confused with it. Oh, it's a charitable donation. It is not. The state of Georgia sees it as a dollar for dollar tax credit. And companies or businesses, S Corps and C Corps and so forth, can give 75% of their tax liability to a critical access rural hospital of their choice up until July 1st, and then it's 100%. And since August of 2020, they're allowing you to possibly deduct it as a federal or a charitable tax donation on your federal income taxes. So It's a huge benefit.
It is a huge benefit.
$60 million, the state of Georgia says, look, we're going to give it to the hospitals. Georgians can benefit from that. They can feel good about paying their taxes by keeping Clinch Memorial Hospital and several other hospitals open. And if anybody has any questions about that, please feel free to reach out to us here at Clinch Memorial.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
I believe there is nothing more important than keeping a hospital open. Now, I'm not saying that every hospital should, but it is so important. If a hospital closes, the likelihood of that community recruiting the right industry to come to town is going to be diminished, because that's one of the first questions you ask anybody in the chamber. They're going to ask, what's the school system like? What's the infrastructure like? What's the healthcare like? And if you don't have a hospital, it's going to push you way down the list of places that they may want to bring their business. So
you're absolutely right. And, rural towns are already facing a huge problem with out-migration, because the ones who go to college usually stay in the urban areas that they attended school in, or they wish to get out of their rural hometowns. And if a hospital closes, people think it's not a big deal, but you think about how many people they employ and the economic driver that is for your community and the sales tax it generates when they shop locally. But then all of your existing industries will eventually close, because they're not going to be able to afford the insurance to stay there. They have to have a hospital within certain miles of their existence, or they really can't be there. So there can be some devastating effects if a hospital closes.
Fantastic. Any other closing thoughts? Anything you haven't shared with our podcast audience that they need to hear before we close?
Gosh, I would just say to forgive yourself as quickly as possible. Accept your failure as another step closer to your success, and to be vulnerable and to try to be a mentor to someone else. Take the time to do that. I think that's hugely important.
Awesome. Well, Angela, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. And for Rob Followell, the Followell Company, and the Ignite Leadership Podcast, I'd just like to say, make it a great day.
Thank you, Rob, so much for having me here today.